There is a specific level of discipline that makes people look at you with genuine fear, a consistency so absolute that it seems almost inhuman. And today, you are going to learn exactly how to acquire it. But before we dismantle your old life, subscribe to the channel right now to join our order of essentialists. Have you ever watched that one person who simply never fails, the one who wakes up every single day at the exact same time, executes the same difficult tasks, and never stops, while you usually give up and surrender by the third week of any new challenge? While everyone else is busy making articulate excuses for their mediocrity, this person just shows up, and when you look at them, you think that is not normal. And you are absolutely right. It is not normal. It is a weaponized state of mind. You are currently stuck in a devastating loop of violent enthusiasm, followed by silent shame, buying books that you only read to page 12 and setting ambitious alarms for 600 a.m. that you negotiate with and snooze within 5 minutes. You believe this inability to stick to a plan is a deep character flaw, but let me remove that heavy burden from your shoulders immediately, because it is not your fault. You are fighting a biological war using weapons that no longer work. You are living in a dopamine economy designed by the smartest engineers in Silicon Valley to fracture your attention span every 8 seconds, meaning your brain is not broken. It has been hijacked by a system that profits from your distraction. However, there is an ancient system created by Zen monks in Japan around the year 1200 AD that produces exactly the kind of frightening consistency we need, a practice called Gyōji, which translates to the practice that perpetuates itself. But there is a catch, because this system is not for everyone. It requires you to brutally kill a part of yourself you never knew existed, the part of you that loves to negotiate with your own potential when things get difficult. Our story begins with a man named Arthur, a high-level executive who appeared to be a massive success on paper, but was internally a graveyard of unfinished projects, abandoned hobbies, and broken promises to himself. Arthur's life was a predictable cycle of manic optimization, where he would buy a $300 juicer on Monday, run 5 miles on Tuesday, and then completely collapse into takeout food and self-loathing by Friday evening. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in October, when Arthur had promised to lead a new initiative at work, prepared for only 3 days instead of a month, and saw the crushing look of pity in his colleagues' eyes during the presentation. Arthur went home, sat on the edge of his bed in total silence, and realized the most terrifying truth of all, which was that he did not trust his own word anymore, and if you cannot trust your own word, you have no reality. He was looking for a productivity hack, but instead he stumbled upon a history lesson involving the records of the Ihai Temple in Japan, where a specific rule has been followed without any interruption for centuries. Since the year 1200 AD, a bell has rung at this temple every single morning at exactly 3:30 a.m., not 5 minutes early and not 5 minutes late, but with a terrifying precision that ignores human feelings. For over 800 years, the monks have woken up without lying in bed to ask themselves if they feel like meditating today, because in their philosophy, that specific question simply does not exist. This is the core concept of Gyōji, which roughly translates to continuous practice. But Arthur learned that the brain categorizes all commitments into 2 specific boxes: reversible commitments and irreversible commitments. A reversible commitment is saying you will try to go to the gym, which invites negotiation, while an irreversible commitment is like being a father, where you do not wake up and decide if you want to be a parent today. A Harvard University neuroscientist discovered that when a behavior is made public, the primitive brain interprets failure as a survival threat, because in ancient tribes, losing status meant expulsion and death. Arthur decided to hack his fear of death by writing a contract, not to himself but to the world, declaring he would perform deep work and physical movement every day at 500 a.m. for 90 days. He signed the paper, posted it on social media, and told his colleagues, and when his wife told him he was being dramatic, He knew he had succeeded because he had finally burned the bridge back to his old life. Day 3 brought the first real test, when the alarm rang at 5 a.m., and his mind immediately began its usual routine of whispering that he was exhausted and that missing one single day wouldn't make a difference. But something fundamental had changed, because the thought of posting online that he had lost after only 3 days was unbearable, making the psychological pain of giving up greater than the physical pain of continuing. Even with all this social pressure, Arthur was still waging a brutal war every single day, because his body did not care about his reputation and desperately wanted to sleep when it was tired. That is when he discovered the monk's second principle of non-negotiable hours, realizing that asking himself when he will do something burns up glucose in the brain that should be used for the actual practice. You are wasting your precious fuel deciding when to drive instead of actually driving. So Arthur chose 5 a.m., not because he loved the sunrise, but because the rest of the world was asleep. At that hour, there were no messages, no emails, and no distractions, meaning the time selection wasn't about optimization, but about the total elimination of every possible reason to do the work later. The first week was absolute hell, as his body fought against him every morning, which is normal because the body is a machine that works with patterns, and he was forcing it to build a new one. In the second week, something changed, and he started waking up 2 minutes before his alarm, proving that his body had begun preparing for what now awaited him, rather than fighting against it. However, Arthur discovered a new problem because, while his schedule was fixed, he kept changing what he did during that time, sometimes meditating and sometimes reading, which gave his brain a new negotiating point. He had eliminated the question of when, but not the question of what. And this is where the teaching on forms became controversial, because it requires you to do exactly the same thing every single day until your mind surrenders. You often think that variety keeps things interesting, but variety is actually where consistency dies, because every time you change what you are doing, your brain has to make new micro-decisions. Every small decision about whether to do push-ups or burpees creates a tiny crack where your old patterns leak back in, sabotaging the momentum you have fought so hard to build. Arthur completely locked everything down into his personal Ango period, creating a strict 90-day sequence of identical actions involving push-ups, meditation, and reading in the exact same order every time. His friends called him robotic, and his wife said he was getting annoying, but they didn't understand that being annoying to the outside world was exactly the point of his internal transformation. By the third week, his mind went to war, screaming that this routine was stupid and he needed to mix things up or burn out, but he simply ignored the voice and continued. By week 6, he was halfway through his push-ups before he even realized he had started proving that the practice was finally taking care of itself without his conscious input. An MIT researcher explains that when you repeat an action in the same context for 66 days, the basal ganglia take over and you are no longer deciding to do it, you are simply doing it. But then the 35th day arrived, and Arthur caught a severe flu, which is exactly where the old pattern usually kicks in and destroys everything you have built up to that point. The mind immediately rationalizes that a sick day equals a rest day, and a rest day equals an exception, creating the gap where everyone usually gives up on their goals. This happens because you mistakenly believe that perfect practice requires perfect conditions. But the brutal reality is that perfect conditions simply do not exist in this world. Dogen understood something critical about gaps that changes everything, writing that practice must continue without even a moment of interruption, because in that tiny gap is where all your old patterns return. The all-or-nothing lie has killed more consistency than laziness ever could, because you tell yourself that if you cannot do the full 20 minutes, then there is no point in doing anything at all. When Arthur woke up at 9 a.m. feeling sick, his first instinct was panic because the streak was broken and the what the hell effect kicked in, urging him to abandon the entire project just to relieve the shame. The old Arthur would have spiraled and said he failed, so he might as well quit, but the new Arthur remembered the concept of wabi-sabi, which is finding beauty and utility in the imperfection of things. A river never stops flowing, and while during a drought it may be reduced to a tiny trickle, it never stops completely, because the moment it stops, it is no longer a river but a memory of water. Arthur realized that his practice was the same, so he didn't restart the count at day 1 or pay the fine. He simply got up at 9:15 a.m. and did an imperfect version of the work. He forgave himself immediately because he learned that the goal isn't a perfect streak of victory, but rather reducing the gap time between the inevitable failure and the immediate return to the path. Then travel day arrived on day 40, involving an airport at 4:00 a.m. and meetings all day, which usually signals the death of any habit because there is no gym and no privacy. Arthur did his push-ups in the handicap stall of the airport bathroom, while people looked at him like he had lost his mind, and he meditated in the Uber on the way to the hotel. Nothing about it was perfect, but everything maintained momentum toward the same goal. He declared weeks ago embodying the true essence of Gyōji, which is simply the practice continuing itself regardless of the environment. That is when people started to notice, not with admiration, but with confusion and subtle fear, telling him to slow down because his discipline made them feel uncomfortable about their own lack of it. Arthur smiled because he knew that when people say, "You are not normal," you are finally on the right track, since normal people achieve normal results, which is just a polite term for a slow death. But then he faced the unexpected obstacles you never saw coming, the things you cannot plan for, like car breakdowns or family emergencies, which are the true killers of consistency. Zen monasteries have operated for centuries through wars and fires because they do not make decisions when obstacles arise. The answer was already decided 800 years ago. Arthur wrote down every obstacle that had ever broken his consistency and pre-solved each one, deciding that if it rained, he would use the garage, and if guests were over, he would be silent. Each scenario had its predetermined response, following the logic that when X happens, I immediately do Y, requiring no thinking and no negotiating, just pure execution. A Yale University behavioral psychologist found that when you pre-decide your actions, you remove decision fatigue from the critical moment, keeping your willpower intact to execute rather than decide. By day 70, Arthur's practice had become completely automatic, to the point where he would sometimes wake up and move through the sequence like a programmed machine without even remembering it. When his mother-in-law visited for a week, he did his push-ups in the bathroom at 5:00 a.m., continuing the practice not because it was convenient, but because the answer was. On the 90th day, he completed his personal Engo, completing 3 months of uninterrupted practice. But the most important thing was that he was no longer the same person. His friends literally told him that his consistency was scary, and his response was perfect, because when your discipline makes others uncomfortable, you know you are finally operating at the right level. Your existence proves that everything they say is impossible is actually just uncomfortable, which is why they call you obsessive and say you need balance so they can feel better about standing still. Arthur realized he wasn't doing it for them, but because he had discovered the secret that consistency isn't about doing something every day. It is about becoming someone who cannot do it any other way. When you implement the Gyōji system through public declaration, fixed schedules, and pre-resolved answers, you are not just creating habits, you are fundamentally reshaping your identity. You stop being someone who tries to be disciplined, and you become someone who simply is disciplined. And when that transformation is complete, the question of willpower becomes entirely irrelevant. The Gyōji system won't make you a better person. It will make you a different person, killing your inconsistent self so that your unbreakable self can finally be born. There is a version of you that is capable of this, a version that does not negotiate and scares the mediocrity out of everyone around you, but you must kill your old self to meet them. Here is your task for today. Do not tell yourself you will try, but pick one tiny action you can do In 5 minutes, make it an irreversible commitment and burn the boat, so there is no way back. I will leave you with the words of the samurai Miyamoto Musashi, who said that there is nothing outside of yourself that can ever enable you to get better, stronger, or richer, because everything exists within. If this video changed your perspective on discipline, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell immediately. And tell me in the comments what your public declaration will be, because the work begins now.